Welcome to the Julie Salant Podcast, the place to reconnect to your heart and live your soul purpose. This is where you will find inspiring information on how to reconnect to your heart, get into mind, body, spirit alignment, and step into your personal power. Together, we will hear messages from the sacred animal kingdom, discuss how to reframe success that works best for you, and learn to step into divine flow, allowing you to do what your soul came here to do. Thank you for being here. And now, let's tune in to today's show.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Julie Salant of the Julie Salant Podcast, the place to reconnect to your heart to live your true purpose. I am your host, and today I have a very special guest. Her name is Ildiko SpinFisher. She is the founder of Life Retuning, a psychological, energy-based, multi-dimensional modality. And she works with living energy systems, facilitating people globally to get empowered and enhance the quality of their lives. She specializes in working with entrepreneurs, and she's passionate about teaching healthy energy awareness in our ever-increasing technological world. And she runs international online courses and masterclasses and presentations. Welcome to the show. I'm so thrilled that you are here.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
I want everyone to know that I have actually had an amazing experience with Ildiko. She does something completely different from what other energy healers do, but let's start at the beginning. And would you mind giving the listeners a little bit of background on how you came to do the work that you're doing today?
Yeah, sure, Julie. I'd be delighted to do that. So to start off, I think it's the same with a lot of people. I didn't actually expect to be doing what I'm doing today. It kind of came as a bit of a shock. The universe decided to shake things up in my life in a major way. So I was having a normal life, although I did have extraordinary telepathic abilities when I was a child. They showed themselves early on, but then you know what it's like. You become a teenager and then a young adult, and you kind of forget about those things because material things take over, or they tend to. The real world intrudes, or what we think is the real world at the time.
Yes.
So at 24 years old, I suffered a nervous breakdown because my life got overloaded with all the disharmonious stuff that I was doing. I wasn't eating a good diet. My relationships were not healthy. My work was not what I should be doing. I didn't have a spiritual dimension at that point to my life. In fact, I was just about doing everything I could unconsciously to bring on the breakdown. And boy, did it hit me like a massive tsunami wave when it happened.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So all of that contributed to you kind of becoming enlightened and putting you on the path that you're on now?
Yeah, totally. I have to say, I believe that pain is the greatest motivator, and boy, was I in emotional pain. I just basically my life imploded. Although I had a breakdown, I had an implosion. I couldn't trust anything anymore. I didn't feel safe. I had panic attacks constantly for about 7 months, about 3 or 4 a day. It was horrific.
Wow.
I had fear, anxiety kicking in. I felt like I'd taken a handful of sand, and I was feeling that the sand was just draining out from my fingers, and everything that I thought I knew just disappeared in that sand. So I was left feeling totally rudderless in a sea of complete confusion and terror. And I stayed in that state for about 8 years, all told.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you get out of that? How did you change from the inside out?
So initially, I went to see my doctor. He didn't really manage to help me tremendously at all. He told me I should either go on beta blockers or I should get myself a brown paper bag, and every time that I felt like I was hyperventilating, I should find my brown paper bag and breathe into it so that
Oh,
I
that's
would.
awesome. That's awesome. That's a
Oh yeah,
wonderful.
where's my brown paper bag? I feel like I'm dying and I'm running out of air. So where is my brown paper bag? I mean, really, you know?
Seriously. Yeah. I'm laughing because I had a similar situation where I had such bad migraines I couldn't even work. And you know what he told me? He said, think happy thoughts.
Oh yeah, great.
Think happy thoughts as you're that sick where you can't even hold your head up. So that's why I'm laughing, but I
Yeah,
understand that. So
yeah.
really they were failing you.
Oh boy, were they failing me. Then I got put onto a 3-month waiting list to go and see a counselor. By the time 3 months was up, I was just in such a desperate state. I could not even go out my front door.
Mm.
I ended up with agoraphobia kicking in, claustrophobia kicking in. Fear of it getting dark. Oh my goodness, it was like every single fear that you could imagine just kind of kicked in. And so I then started moving a little bit into the alternative. One of my co-workers told me about somebody who was doing homeopathy. And so I went along and tried homeopathy. And although I know that it was starting to do something, but I was in such a desperate state that it was way over and beyond what the homeopathy could do for me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that he put me on was lithium, but obviously it was the homeopathic, very, very, very tiny dosage. In fact, it's just the vibration in the water, isn't it, with homeopathy? And I experienced a very strange thing, which was that my mind started very rapidly going through lots and lots of memories. So I would be sitting there and suddenly my mind would just kick in with like, oh, we're doing the archives now. And it would just flick through about 100 memories. I couldn't even grab hold of what the memories were, but it was like flicking through a book. It was really weird.
Wow.
So I had some pretty extraordinary experiences within that time. And then I gradually moved on to looking into aromatherapy because I discovered that lavender oil would slightly pull down my level of distress, my level of anxiety. So I had it practically permanently up to my nose, wherever I was going. I also discovered Bach's, it's the Bach flower remedy, the rescue remedy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I think they should have had me as a rep, and they should have been paying me because I went through so many bottles of that stuff. I tell you, it was just unbelievable. But the bottom line was I couldn't find any relief anywhere. I got to the point where I didn't even trust that my own head was a safe space. It was
Wow.
just horrific. And gradually, as I tried aromatherapy, I tried hypnotherapy, NLP, you name it, I was ticking down the list, checking everything down the list. Nothing helped, not to an extent that it would actually make enough of a difference to improve the quality of my life. And about 7 to 8 years in, I'd given up all hope. 24 years old, my life should have been starting and it was ending as far as I was concerned.
Mm.
I could see myself going on to whatever age I would live to, living a completely cut down, narrow little life. And it was truly horrific. When I looked around to see that, friends of mine were going ahead and living their lives, and I just couldn't. So it was, truly distressing. And finally, I read an article which was about energy psychology. So to touch on it briefly, there was an energy, or rather a psychologist who had researched into a little bit further out of his field and looked into the possibility that as Michael Faraday came up with the idea and concept of fields, which are areas of influence. They don't change anything, but they are areas of influence where energy is actually contained within a area. And he came up with discovered the concept of thought fields. So he looked into, well, what would a thought field contain and how can it affect our thoughts and our emotions? And he did an amazing amount of research and work. And he developed what I really consider to be the first rung of energy psychology and energy work, which was about now 35, 40 years ago. And he was a gentleman called Dr. Roger Callahan. And I was privileged to study with him and start to understand about what could be possible with regards to how to change our thought patterns, how to switch off emotions. And it was really through going to a therapist who was trying out these techniques at the time that I found that something was actually starting to work. After 8 years, Julie, you can imagine of being in hell, to have that little chink of bright light was hopeful, but I hardly dared believe that it was possible.
Right.
Okay? Just got to the point where I just had no concept of hope anymore. So it was a great revelation for me to start understanding that there was something that could possibly take me from feeling that I was really anxious about something, and then a couple of minutes later thinking, well, actually, that's not too bad. So that was earth-shattering for me.
Yeah, it is. That's life-changing right there.
It is. So I was privileged enough to come across this information. I also started looking into Reiki, and I did my Reiki 1 and my 2. So I started understanding about energy. However, what I found was that nobody I asked about Reiki and how it works could give me an answer. And that frustrated the heck out of me because I have a very scientific mind. And when somebody said, oh, I don't really know, you just channel it through, I said, nah, that's not enough for me. I want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really answering enough of my need, if you will. I went on to actually study with Dr. Roger Callahan. I did actually start teaching his system as well for a while. And then I got to the point where I found that it wasn't answering enough of my questions. And it was at that point that I actually launched myself off into space and didn't know what was going to happen after that. But I started looking into quantum physics. I started researching quantum physics to see if there were any answers for what was actually going on with me energetically. And it was at that point that I started getting the answers coming back from the scientists. I don't think that they would have, I think they would have been surprised at how their research was being used, because I was actually using my own energy field, my, if you will, people know of the aura. Well, I term it the human energy field because it's actually the energy that's important here. I was using my own energy field as my laboratory. Wow. So while they were using actual laboratories, I was using my energy field as a testing laboratory to see if quantum physics could actually fit into our everyday lives, or my everyday life at that point. And I started discovering some incredible truths about how energy works. And over the years, over the past 15, 20 years, I started developing some techniques which took things way and above outside of the energy psychology that I had studied, because I was applying questions that hadn't been asked, not by somebody who was doing psychology or therapy or healing. Those questions were not being asked, and I asked them, and I got the answers. So gradually, my techniques started building And eventually I pulled them together, and they are now known as Life Retuning.
Life